Hey guys, welcome to another episode, pre-recorded episode, whatever you want to call this, of the TWSN Soccer Sit-Down Show. I'm Joe Cammarota, joined with Christian DeBlock and Max Marrero, and today we're just going to preview the Premier League. It starts up on Thursday when Arsenal face off against Brentford, and let's get right into it here. Christian, we'll start with our each of our tables, our Premier League tables, how everything goes. We're going to go 1 through 20. So Christian, let's start with you.
Want to start from the bottom or the top?
Start from the top.
Okay. After what we saw a couple days ago with Romelu Lukaku, I'm going to be a little bit bold. I'm also assuming that Jules Koundé from Sevilla comes through. But either way, I think Chelsea will just edge Manchester City. So that's my 1-2, Chelsea, Manchester City. Max convinced me on Saturday. I was a little hesitant to put Liverpool ahead of Manchester United, but I'm going to do it. 3rd for Liverpool, 4th for United. That'll top up my top 4. In the Europa League spot, I'm going to go with Leicester. They've been there year in, year out, and I think the 2 signings they made, Boukabari Soumare and Patson Daka, are 2 important ones to provide a lot of depth. They also kept Yuri Tielemans, so put them in 5th. Arsenal, I'm going to have in 6th. I think Ben White's an overpay, but still a good center back and an improvement, so they'll link up with Gabriel. 7th will be Aston Villa. I think they've made a ton of good signings, even though they've lost Jack Grealish. 8th, Leeds United. I think they'll be really good in their second season under Bielsa in the Premier League. 9th, Tottenham. I think they still will struggle, and I think Nuno isn't the manager that's going to get this team up to the next level. 10th, Everton. 11, West Ham. I think they're going to really struggle, which we will probably touch on later. 12th, Crystal Palace. We were just talking about it in the back room. I think even though they lose Eze for 7-9 months from May with his Achilles injury, they've made a great couple signings. We can touch that later. Wolves 13th, 14th Brentford, so they'll be the highest team I have that comes up from promotion. 15 Brighton, 16 Norwich, 17th Burnley. I was tempted to put them in relegation spot, but they're probably going to end up staying alive somehow. Newcastle will be my first relegation side. 19th Southampton, and topping it off, Watford in 20th.
You have Norwich staying up. That's interesting. Losing Buendia, I really think it's going to hurt them.
Yes, but I think they've done some good business. They got Milot Rasica from Werder Bremen, and they've also actually signed Josh Sargent, funny enough, 2 guys from Werder Bremen. I think that Daniel Farke's tested and proven to the point where he's going to be ready to take this team to at least staving off relegation in their second turnaround, because 2 years ago, they weren't good enough, even with guys like Buendia, Todd Cantwell, Timo Pukki. But having another second striker, I think, will help to help Pukki put the goals in. I don't know how Sargent will perform in the Premier League. That's to be seen. But I think they'll do enough to finish 16th.
Max, what's your table looking like?
All right. So, I agree with a lot of Christian, especially when we go towards the middle of the table. I agree with a lot of Christian's points, but I have a pretty different top 4. So I have City winning the title. I have Liverpool finishing 2nd with United 3rd and Chelsea 4th. I have Leicester City in 5th. I agree with everything Christian mentioned there. I actually have Tottenham in 6th, and I have Arsenal in 7th. And then after that, I have Aston Villa in 8th, West Ham in 9th, Leeds at 10th, so similar to last year. I have Everton all the way down to 11, Wolves at 12, Southampton at 13, Crystal Palace at 14, Newcastle at 15, Brighton at 16. I would have to say probably Burnley at 17, Norwich at 18, Brentford at 19, and Watford at 20.
You got all the guys coming up, all the teams that are coming up going straight back down.
Yeah.
Interesting choice there. I'm almost with you 100% on that. A little bit of change up. I'll go with mine now. They got Man City finishing 1st, Chelsea finishing 2nd, Manchester United finishing 3rd, Liverpool finishing 4th, Leicester inevitably finishing 5th like they always do. Aston Villa finishing 6th, Spurs finishing 7th, Arsenal finishing 8th. I actually switched those 2 yesterday. I originally had Arsenal finishing above Spurs. After that preseason game, I'm not convinced on the Arsenal team at all. Spurs, I'm not either. That's another topic. Like you guys know, I'm not a huge fan of the Nuno appointment there, but I still think they'll be decent this year. Leeds at 9, Crystal Palace at 10. I really like the moves they made this summer. West Ham at 11. I think that playing in Europe's really going to hurt them. I really think that they don't have the depth to do both. Then I got Wolves at 12, Everton at 13th, Burnley at 14th, Newcastle at 15th, 16th Brighton. I'm interested to see how the Eddie Nketiah helps them out, because I believe they're on the brink, or they just got Nketiah from Arsenal, so I'm intrigued to see how that is. I mean, I don't rate Nketiah that highly, but maybe he could help cash in on those expected goals that they love those expected goals. They just got to put them through now. Then where were we? We were at Brighton at 16. Watford, I think, goes to 17. I only have Watford staying up because I think they're experienced and they know how to stay up in the Prem. So that's why I'm giving it to them over Brentford, who's going to finish 18th. Southampton finishes 19th, and Norwich, per usual, will come in 20th. You guys have anything you guys?
Yeah, so you think Southampton's going down?
Yeah, I don't think Southampton's a very good team at all this year. Losing Ings, I think, really, really hurts. They played so poorly at the end of last season that their form last season was relegation form, let's be honest.
Well, at least in the latter half, because they started off the year pretty strong.
They did. They could not keep it up. I mean, all they really have now is what, James Ward-Prowse, free kick specialist?
Yeah.
I mean, Che Adams is going to have to put in 15 goals probably.
Is he going to be putting in 15 goals, though?
I'm not willing to put my money on it.
I just trust Ralph Hasenhüttl to be good enough to keep him up. I don't expect him to do too much this year, but I think they are a good enough side with the likes of James Ward-Prowse, and that they can stay up. But I think they'll be in the conversation of relegation for a lot of the year. But I think they'll do enough just to be comfortable enough to stay in the Prem this year. That's why I have them all the way at 13th, actually.
Are they going to get, this is kind of a joke, kind of not, are they going to lose 9-0 for a third straight year?
Dude, it's crazy to think about that, right? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it's hard to believe that. I mean, come on.
That'd be crazy, though.
I mean, one of the top 4 teams could do it. I wouldn't put City or Chelsea getting 9 past. It's not
Chelsea. Chelsea's not putting 9 past anyone this year. Chelsea is a defensive team. Come on.
Chelsea doesn't score 9 goals.
City, if anything, or Leicester.
Can we actually have this conversation about Liverpool versus Chelsea? Who's going to be second, or that top 4 in general? Because I kind of want to have this discussion, because I mentioned this in the Saturday show, and I want to touch on it a little bit more with more detail now. I think Liverpool, even with Lukaku going to Chelsea and Chelsea being a very, very good side and expecting more from Kai Havertz, because we saw that once Kai Havertz was put in that false 9 role, or that, borderline, deep lying forward role, he was very, very successful, especially the latter half of the season once he got adjusted to the nature of the Premier League. So I expect Chelsea to be right there in the thick of things. But for me, I just don't know if they have enough quality to compete in a league setting with the likes of a United who, in my opinion, might have the best defense in the league, assuming they're healthy and these guys play like they should. And the personnel in general, they seem like they're ready to really mount a serious title challenge. And I think this is something that they've been building up for many years. So I think the quality of United might see him past Chelsea, as in being able to grind results on a consistent basis. Not to say they're necessarily a better team head to head, but I just think for a league setting, they might have the quality and the depth that can see him through and getting more consistent points than Chelsea. And Liverpool, I said this on Saturday, I think, assuming Van Dijk is back even at 85%, which I'm sure
he hasn't looked good in preseason, though.
Yeah, but he's easing back into it.
He's got sat down multiple times.
Joe,
I know he has, but I don't read much into that. You can't put much stock into that. He hasn't played in 9 months or whatever it's been. So this is his first round back. So I don't really put much stock into that. Assuming he's back anywhere near what he was, and the partnership with Konate, who I rate very highly. And again, there's question marks with
Joe Gomez.
It's a good question. Maybe not early on in the season, but I think as the season progresses, he will be the second center back option to Van Dijk. I just think he has too much quality to not be starting every week if he's healthy. I think he's better than Joe Gomez personally. But again, there's question marks for him because I think, obviously there's a transition between the speed of the Bundesliga in Germany and in the Prem. And, for any player that's coming from that is making that transition, they're going to need that time to adjust. So I'm not saying Konate is going to go and shock the world from the start. He very well may, but I just don't know that yet. And also you bring up a good point. Joe Gomez might be starting early on because he's been in that rotation longer. So I could see that. But also I just think, the issue with Liverpool was inconsistency in the front and in the attack. And a lot of that, in my opinion, is predicated on the fact that there wasn't that stability in the back. And I think now that they're going to have that stability in the back, it's going to allow, let's just start with the fullbacks. Yes, Robertson went down with an injury. I don't know if you guys saw that. That could be serious for them. But assuming Robertson gets back at relatively quickly, I don't know the severity of the injury.
I thought it looked like a broken ankle or something like that. I don't know if that's.
I'm
what it
not
was.
sure. I've heard
Christian,
multiple
you
things.
might know what it is.
Yeah.
I just saw that they were going to get scans today, so we'll have to update you guys on that Saturday, but I don't know yet.
Well, assuming that it's not as severe as a broken ankle and then he'll be out a few weeks, I think they'll be okay. But, in general, having that stability in the back line is going to allow for the fullbacks to come up and attack. And I think the front three are going to be able to have more confidence up front and scoring goals because they don't have to worry about losing the ball in the final third, possibly getting caught out in the counter and then conceding a quick goal because they don't have any stability in the back. And because of that stability, Alisson's going to have a bounce back year because he was very shaky last year. And I think, we're going to see the old Sadio Mane. I think we're going to see Mo Salah. Mo Salah had a good year last year, so I think we'll see more of that. And the biggest question is Bobby Firmino going to stay in there? If it's him or Diogo Jota, personally, I would put Jota in there. I think they're going to be banging in goals. And I think they're going to be really, really serious contenders for the league this year because the only team we've seen in this new era of quote unquote Pep Man City dominance is Liverpool really contesting with them. And Liverpool's won the league.
Won in 2016 though.
Yeah, but that was Pep's first year. That was before he brought in his guys. I'm talking about now, the side with Kyle Walker, Gundogan, obviously Sterling has emerged. Like I'm saying, like this new Pep oriented Man City. That first year was a transitionary year between Pellegrini and Pep. So like I don't really count that as much. I'm talking about during peak Pep Man City. Liverpool was the only team to really mount a title challenge, and they're the ones that ultimately won the league last year or 2 years ago now. And I just think that now that the pressure's off of them, everyone's talking about United, everyone's talking about Chelsea, as they should. Now that there's no pressure on Liverpool, I think the quality of Klopp, the fact that he's so determined to get his revenge, and just the side in general, I think the squad is going to be determined to kind of earn their worth in that title conversation again. I think that's going to be enough to put them second, personally.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't really rate Liverpool this year. I think they're back. I think we're going to see a regression of Virgil van Dijk. I just think coming off an ACL injury at his age, it's not easy to do. I don't think we're going to see him peak levels. I think their defense will be okay. I think Alisson will be okay. I just don't trust Sadio Mane in the year 2021, 2022. I mean, he looked awful last year. Unless he could get his confidence back, I think Klopp's going to stick with Bobby Firmino at the 9 instead of Diogo Jota, who should be starting. And I think Salah will still get his goals. I just don't really rate this Liverpool team that highly. I think they get top 4 because they still have a lot of quality. I think AFCON's going to mess them up a little bit too. I think Chelsea's the clear number 2 now with Lukaku in the fold.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one in the in the minority here because I had Chelsea finishing first actually. But before I mention that, I mean, Liverpool, it's going to be tough to see. Yesterday Van Dijk played 71 minutes. I actually think Konate and Matip are actually going to start the first game against Norwich, just because they need to ramp up Gomez and Van Dijk. But either way, that's 4 strong center backs. I think Matip's he's getting older and not as effective, and he never can really stay on the pitch. So it's hard to rely on him. But either way, they're more solidified defensively. But I think even if Robertson's hurt, you still have Alexander-Arnold, who's either the best or the second best attacking right back in the world, along with Achraf Hakimi. And I think, like Max mentioned, having the solidifying defense where you have all of your top center backs allows him to go forward, which he wasn't allowed to do last season because we were playing, Reece Williams and Nat Phillips at the back for a majority of the second half of the campaign. Fabinho and Jordan Henderson had to play center back for rough periods of time. It was probably months upon months where they were playing center back. So, I think Liverpool are good enough to challenge. I think I'm a little more optimistic on Sadio Mane. I think that's probably because I'm a Liverpool fan, of course, but I think, we're only judging off one bad season. And there was a lot of chaos going around the squad. Everybody was hurt. There were people missing in and out of the team. I think having, consistency between their front 3, their back 4, I think Sadio Mane is going to have a better year. I don't know if he's going to be back to the level he was at 2 years ago when he was one of the best wingers in the league, maybe even in that conversation for top 10 in Europe. But I think he's still going to be very productive. Of course, you can talk about Firmino and Jota. I think Jota is probably the better one. But I'm not sold on Firmino being done and dusted. I mean, once again, it's all going to come down to, how solidified the squad is. Because if you have the consistent 11, which is probably going to be Alisson, Van Dijk, Gomez, maybe Konate, Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, and then the trio in the midfield with Henderson, Thiago, and Fabinho. If those things are consistent, I think the front three will be back to not their best, but a very high level, which is certainly capable of finishing in the top 4 and certainly maybe even finishing second, like Max mentions. But for me, Chelsea, I think getting Lukaku in is massive. We mentioned it on Saturday. It's the biggest news probably for them because they're really in dire need of a striker. And I think Kai Havertz is probably best suited to play in that 3-5-2 in more of an attacking mid role alongside Mason Mount, which I think those will be their front three: Lukaku, Havertz, and Mount. I don't know what you guys think of that, but probably going to see Timo Werner go to the bench, Christian Pulisic, Hakim Ziyech. I mean, they have so much depth up front. But if I had to guess, I mean, let's see what you guys think. I think Lukaku, Mount, and Havertz would be their starting 3 up there.
Up front, no way.
I think
Timo. Timo's got to be on the wing. And I think Pulisic
I disagree. I don't think they're starting Timo. I think you have to start Lukaku, no doubt, but I think you're going to start Havertz and possibly one of Pulisic or Ziyech. I just don't see how Havertz gets in that team. He'll
Mount's
be a rotation
midfielder, not a winger. Mount is an 8. Mount is an 8.
Yeah, but they play with Jorginho and Conte as the 2 mid.
They play a 3-4-3.
I thought it was a 3-5-2.
They do play a 3-5-2.
They do? I thought it was a 3-4-3.
They play with 3 at the back. Usually it's Thiago Silva, Christensen, and Rudiger. Those are the 3 center backs
on the wings. So that's 3 in the back, right?
3 in the back, and then you have Reece James, and Ben Chilwell on the left.
Yeah, and then 2 midfielders, and then 2 attacking midfielders and a striker, right? I think so.
It seems that, yeah, I believe so.
I don't know if they have the wingers. I thought they have wingers up top.
No, it's the wing backs are technically the wingers.
I thought the wing backs are, and then okay, yeah. See,
I just think for me the biggest deciding factor for me to call Chelsea possible title winners is if they can secure the signing of Jules Koundé, because I think that Thiago Silva, even though he's still class, I mean, how much can you count on him to be there the entire year? And I think he's such a huge part of that stability at the back. Not to say that Christensen and Rudiger can't hold their own, obviously, but I think if they can get Jules Koundé to fill in that next role, so if either Rudiger and Christensen are out of form, or even if Thiago Silva gets hurt again, you have that. He is world class in my opinion. He's bordering world class as a center back. So I think if you could secure Jules Koundé, that to me can really decide whether or not they can really mount a title challenge. They'll obviously be in the thick of things because they're quality and they have a manager that just won the Champions League. But I just think, in a league type format, I just don't know if Chelsea has the consistency up front. There's going to be a lot of question marks. It really hinges on what version of Lukaku we're going to get. Are we, like I said on Saturday, are we going to get the Lukaku that played for United that you can count on him on occasion? Of course, he's quality. But is he going to be there game in and game out and score goals and be in the thick of things? Or is he going to kind of shy away when the moment matters, when there's the biggest moments, right? Like we saw for United. But then there's also the possibility we'll get the Inter version, which is he's no doubt in the conversation of best striker in the world, and he's scoring on a consistent basis, and he's arguably the best player in the league, right? So I think if we can get that Inter version of Lukaku, absolutely, I could even have him going as high as 2 or possibly even winning it. But I just think, I think we can't really rush the judgment either way. That's why I want to be cautious, and I'm going to say they're 100% a top 4 team, but I just don't know how far I could see them going because there's so many question marks with regard to the tactics. Like, how successful is the 3-5-2 going to be this whole year? It really worked in the latter half of the season because, like we see with any team that gets a new manager, there's always that honeymoon phase, right? Where as soon as a new manager comes in, the players, all want to play really well. They want to earn their spot on the team, and everyone wants to rally around the new manager. And that was great for obviously Chelsea because that took them over to the Champions League. But for example, we even saw that as recent as when Ole took over the job for Mourinho as a caretaker. United had a really nice little patch of form, but then after that, they had a few months where they were just very, very inconsistent. And yeah, we're seeing the improvement now, but there's going to be inevitable decline with Chelsea because I just don't know if they can play up to that level we saw at the end of last year on a consistent basis. I absolutely can eat my words and be wrong, but for me, they're the team that has the most question marks, and I need to see it before I can give it to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to transition this into why we have our teams that we have winning the title, and that's the reason I have City winning it over Chelsea. We saw last year, Chelsea really almost battled top four if it wasn't for Spurs beating Leicester on the final day. Chelsea did really well in Champions League. They did well in the league, but I mean, they didn't do too much better than when Tuchel took over. It wasn't like they went from 10th to 4th. What were they in the what? 4th there? I think they were already top four when Lampard left. What were they?
They were 4th, 5th. Yeah.
They were like right there. They maybe only went up a spot. I mean, this is not me trying to take a dig at Tuchel because I think he's a great manager. But overall, they didn't perform all that well in the league. Like, it wasn't like they went out there, they got Tuchel, and they were like, oh, they're so much better than the league right now. They're just taking the league over by storm. They played very well with Tuchel, but they still had their moments. I do think that's the reason they're not going to beat City, because City is just such a juggernaut in the league that you basically got to win every single game to overtake City. My bad, I'm stumbling on the words there. But City's just such a juggernaut that you just have to win every game, because it just feels like if you don't, you're not going to catch up to them. Once you fall behind City, you can't catch up with them. And we saw that in 2018, 2019 with Liverpool and City, where they played. City got the advantage over Liverpool at that point, and they just didn't let up after that.
Well, didn't Liverpool finish with 98 points that year?
Yeah, because there was that game they played. It was over winter break for us.
It was in January at the Etihad.
Yeah. And it was that, I think Sane scored.
Sane with the winner. Yep.
Sane with the winner. Yeah. And that let City jump Liverpool.
I think Liverpool were 9 points top at that point. And then
they were in December. They were 9 points top, and then City mounted a quick little comeback there. But then after that, it was neck to neck the entire year.
It was just City. I think that gave City the lead on the table, and pretty sure
it just closed the gap, and then Liverpool started to drop off
because it went from like I think it was a 7-point margin going into that game, and then that put City 4 points behind, and then City just kept winning, and then if Liverpool dropped points, that allowed City to slowly start overtaking them, and then towards the end of the year, it was very neck to neck. So again, I agree with 100% what you're saying, Joe. Like, again, assuming City starts off and plays, and stays healthy and plays as consistent as they have been these past few years, I think it will require a lot of quality and a lot of consistent. You have to win almost every game to beat.
And Chelsea doesn't have the depth that City has either.
I don't think so either.
City lose Gundogan, they put Jack Grealish there. City lose Foden, they put Jack Grealish or Sterling there. It doesn't really matter. They could fit Jack Grealish, who is one of the best players in the Premier League, anywhere in their field. Jack Grealish
that year they beat Liverpool, De Bruyne was out 3/4 of the season.
Yeah,
they won the league without De Bruyne.
It's insane. City just has so much depth that an injury or two isn't going to slow them down.
Yeah, and before you mentioned, I actually just looked up where Chelsea were, because I actually thought they were pretty low in the table. They actually were 9th when Tuchel was hired.
Oh, wow. I was way off there.
Because I remember it was their first match against with Tuchel at the manager spot was Wolves. I remember it was in January, and they were actually low in the table. I just confirmed it was 9th. So
they drew that game, right?
What'd you say?
No,
they drew that game.
They drew that game. What'd you say?
Wasn't that the game Wolves came back? They were like down 1-0, and
then it was a 0-0 draw, I believe.
You're thinking of the Pedro Neto winner. That was when Lampard was still at the spot. Okay. Yeah. So I think and the points you guys make about their depth certainly reasonable. I think, especially going forward though with Chelsea, I think they have a lot of depth. Maybe not as much in the other areas of the pitch, but I mean, Hakim Ziyech, I mean, he had a really tough first season for Chelsea, but still a very quality player. Christian Pulisic, obviously, as all three of us are very into American soccer, he's a guy that we would like to see, performing day in, day out, but seems like he's not going to get the minutes, but he's still very, talented. I think Timo Werner, gets a lot of stick. He's not a very good goal scorer. We all know that, but he still does stuff like I mentioned on the Soccer Sit-Down show on Saturday, that he does a lot of stuff off the ball with his runs, stretching the defense and doing those things. So he's still a valuable piece to that team. I mean, Callum Hudson-Odoi is the one guy that we think should probably be leaving the club at this point and still stays there. And I think he might even use him as a right wing back, as a backup to Reece James, which is crazy enough. So I think while they don't have the same amount of depth as Manchester City, I believe we're going to get the best out of Lukaku in terms of seeing an introversion. I do understand, Max, of being a little hesitant because it's a very different league in terms of how defenses set up compared to, the Serie A and the Premier League. But I feel that he's at his best. He's coming back with a mentality that he doesn't want to, he wants to prove people wrong, because clearly, when he was with Manchester United, he wasn't up to the level, had some flashes of it, but it wasn't, consistent enough. And I do believe Jules Koundé will come through. Whether it does, I think that does play a huge role because, like you mentioned, I don't know what Thiago is in terms of age, Thiago Silva, but you can't rely on him to play 30-plus games and play at a high level either. They do have Andres Christensen. They do have Antonio Rudiger. I think Kurt Zuma would go in a deal for Koundé if it goes.
He's 36, by the way. Thiago Silva's 36.
And he came off in the Champions League final. Even though I think he's still a class center back, probably top 10, top 15 in the world, even at his age, because of experience, you can't rely on him to win a Premier League as the number one center back. I think Jules Koundé needs to be there. And I think that would play a huge role, but I'm considering how Chelsea does their business. I don't think they will mess up on this. I think they will get it over, but it's certainly a great conversation we'll have all season.
And Max, why do you have City winning the league?
Well, so I just have to, I'm just going based on what I've seen, right? We've seen City be in the conversation virtually every year, except for that first year with Pep, that transitionary year. And I just think, like you said, they have the quality they've shown it many times before. They have the quality to go on and win leagues. And at the end of the day, it's a mixture of having quality on the pitch and depth. And that's what wins you leagues. And I think City has the best all around depth in the Premier League. And I think, in my opinion, they have the best manager in the Premier League, and they have a guy that's done it before. And I think that, their quality will see them through. I will tell you this, though. I expect them to have a pretty rough start to the year. I think they're going to actually lose the first game to Tottenham. And a lot of that is because I think if you saw anything, I don't really put much stock in the Community Shield as is, but I don't know if you guys saw the team that they put out there. They put out a team of mainly academy players. And a lot of that is predicated on the fact that we still have a few injuries to Phil Foden. He got hurt in the Euros. He's still hurt. De Bruyne, I believe, has a knock as well. And a lot of those guys also are just on vacation because they went to the latter stages of the Euros. We have obviously a lot of players that played in that England final. So for them, the beginning part of the season will be preseason because they didn't play in preseason. So I think we're going to get and also that game in the Community Shield, you saw even the players that are usually in the starting 11 that kind of played a little bit, they looked rusty, man, really rusty. So I just think that, and also the whole speculation about Kane leaving, Kane's now going to play. I just think it has a recipe for disaster for week one. So I do expect City to lose that game. But regardless of that, even if it's a rough start, I think the quality of City will see them through. We saw it last year. They didn't have the best of starts either. But as their players started regaining form and as the season progressed, their quality saw them through and get results and grind results. And, their depth ultimately, I think, helped a lot on that end. And I just think that's why I have to take him to win the league as of now. But I wouldn't be surprised if one of these other teams has something to say about that.
Let's now transition to probably the latter part of our video with our Golden Boot winner and our Player of the Season. And Christian, I'll start with you. Who do you think is going to win Golden Boot, and who do you think your Player of the Season is this year?
So I actually have it as the same person. I think going off of what I've said, throughout this video and throughout the last couple of weeks, if Lukaku comes through, which he's now through, and Chelsea are going to win the league, I think he not only wins Golden Boot, but also wins Player of the Year. I think I'm going off what I believe. I do think he's going to come into the league and get off going right away. And he's probably going to score, in my opinion, somewhere in the range of 25 to 30 goals. And I think if he does that, he's going to win Player of the Year. I think there's certainly other candidates. If Chelsea were to win the league, you could certainly talk about a guy like N'Golo Kante. I think Kai Havertz could contribute to, 10 plus goals and 10 plus assists. He's that type of talent. But other than that, I think those are probably the three guys I would mention for Chelsea. Of course, when you guys mentioned Manchester City, there's plenty of candidates in there. But judging off what I believe, one of those two teams is going to win it. And that there's plenty of candidates. But for me, Golden Boot goes to Lukaku and Player of the Year goes to Lukaku.
Max, what about you? What do you think?
I think Golden Boot is going to be Mohamed Salah. I think he's going to have a great season. And, we saw even in those years past that they were competing for the title, he was in that conversation and even won it. So I think Mohamed Salah is going to be the Golden Boot winner of this year. And I think player of the season, it's a tough one for me because you never know. There's going to be some teams that are going to surprise us, some players that are going to come through. But I think I'm going to take the safe pick and go Kevin De Bruyne for player of the season again, because I just think that, if you had to ask me bias aside who the best player in the Premier League is, I think we'd all agree it's probably Kevin De Bruyne. So as of now, I would argue that he's going to win player of the year.
I'm going to go Golden Boot is Bruno Fernandes. I think Salah would have been my pick. It wasn't for AFCON. I really do think that's going to mess him up because I think he's going to miss like 4 games for that, something like that. They're out for a month because of AFCON. So I do think that's going to hamper him on his goals. Bruno Fernandes gets penalties. He's the United's penalty taker, and he's a poacher. He knows what he's doing. And I think adding Jadon Sancho to the mix is really going to help him out. I think that offense is going to be deadly, and there's going to be a lot of pens per usual for Manchester United. Not even trying to take a dig. Manchester United got to get a lot of penalties. So I think that because of that, he's going to win Golden Boot. And then player of the season, I'm going to go Kevin De Bruyne, 3-peat for him. Although Harry Kane should have won it last year, let's be honest. But other than him, I don't really know who's better than Kevin. And I don't think Harry Kane's going to have that good of a season this year. So De Bruyne's my pick. So that'll wrap it up for us here today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Saturday for a regular live TWSN Soccer Sit-Down show. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the games in the Premier League. But yeah, here are our predictions, our preview for the Premier League. It's going to be a fun season, guys. So for Joe Cammarota, Christian DeBlock, and Max Marrero, we're signing off.